improving the lives of voters. It's pretty simple. It's been going on a long time. Herbert Hoover, a chicken in every pot, a car in every garage. That was his promise during the 1928 campaign. He won. Because voters appreciate it. They always do appreciate it if they think you're trying to help them. Bill Clinton got elected twice because he campaigned on actual, tangible concerns of actual people, middle-class people. That all seems like ancient history now. Democrats don't do that anymore. Modern Democrats understand that changing the minds of voters is hard, especially when you despise them and attack them for the sin of, I don't know, being white or male or privileged or heteronormative or whatever. They don't like you if you don't like them. So you don't bother changing their minds. You change the voters themselves. Look at Virginia. It just happened there. The state's elected representatives decided long ago they didn't want the state's laws made by those who break them, so they deprived convicted felons of the right to vote. Terry McAuliffe knew it would benefit his party if felons could vote again, so he unilaterally restored those rights and attacked anyone who disagreed as a bigot. Remember that? Well, currently, control of Virginia's House of Delegates hinges on a single race where the candidates literally tied with more than 23,000 votes cast. In other words, McAuliffe's gambit worked. So why not try it on a national scale with a group far larger than just convicted felons? Democrats know if they keep up the flood of illegals into the country, they can eventually turn it into a flood of voters for them. They don't have to foster economic growth or be capable administrators or provide good government. They just have to keep the pump flowing and power will be theirs. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's happening in public. You can watch it happen. So when Democrats howl about shutting down the government because they want total surrender on DACA, remember, this is the reason why. Their political success does not depend on good policies, but on demographic replacement. And they'll do anything to make sure it happens. And one more thing, by the way. In the interest of nonpartisan fairness and honesty, which we believe in, it's not just Democrats who believe in protecting illegal immigrants at all costs. Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, he's retiring, but he's still a Republican. He agreed to support the GOP tax plan in return for the promise of an amnesty deal. You thought the tax plan was about cutting your taxes or making our economy stronger, doing something for this country. But for Jeff Flake, and likely for other Republicans at Capitol Hill, hate to say it, but it's true, the real priority was making sure that not a single illegal was ever deported, because that's what they really care about. Congressman John Garamendi is a Democrat. He represents the state of California, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you.
So the priority here, I think, is really revealing. All the things going on in this country, a lot of them bad, and Democrats in the Congress have said the one thing we won't put up with is not giving amnesty to 700,000 people here illegally. Why is that number one on the list of concerns?
It may or may not be number one. It is among the list. It is one of the issues on the list. There are others. There are the health care issues that are out there, the 9 million children in the Children's Health Insurance Program. Want to get that funded without cutting other essential health programs, which is the current proposal that's being put forward. So there are a series of issues. There's the health care issue. There is certainly the issue, DACA is one of them. Actually, we kind of stand with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on this one.
Oh, I bet.
They want us to solve
You're taking money from the same people. But I just wonder, like, why?
Do?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, this is a concern of big business, of donors. They want cheap labor. But
well, it's more than that.
Is there any economist you've ever met who says the key to prosperity is importing a lot of poor people with low levels of education?
That's quite different than the DACA issue. The DACA issue are young men and women, usually that came here as children with their parents. Many young children, 5 years, even younger than that. So they grew up here. They are really American in every way, except they don't have the papers.
Well, but their education levels are considerably lower than that of America. Well, they are. Actually, I have the numbers right here. 22% have a bachelor's degree. That's compared to 32%, 10 points below native-born Americans. Relatively few have even high school degrees, even though the majority are adults.
And many are in the military.
There are some in the military. But my question is, as a broader question of policy, we're in a high-tech economy. Everyone knows that skills and education are key. Why are we letting in 1 million low-wage, low-skilled workers every year?
Well, there's even a better question than that. Why did we spend $1.5 trillion and not a nickel on education, not a nickel on job training? We just did that today. And we set priorities today. We said the priority is to transfer a huge amount of money to corporations and to the super wealthy, the top 1%. 83% of all that money went there, and not a nickel for education, not for the job training. Then
I wonder why you're not holding up the government over that, or the fact that carried interest loophole is still in the tax code, which helps big Democratic donors, the hedge funds, the private equity guys, but you're not shutting down the government over that. You're shutting it down over. Okay, but instead, it's to give citizenship or legal status to people here illegally. I'm beginning to think maybe the motive is getting new voters, honestly.
Well, I don't think it's going to make a difference on the voting scale, but what does make a difference is that there are 800,000 young men and women that were literally raised in the United States that are going to be deported very shortly. This is an important workforce. 22% of what, 800,000? We're talking about what? Want to do the math?
It's a lot of people. I just wonder if, I mean, I don't think there's any person who says the U.S. economy is crying out for more low-skilled labor. It's just not. It's a high-tech. You're from California. I don't need to tell you that.
Why don't we talk about the agricultural labor program where there is a need for low-skilled workers?
But the future is not more people with fifth-grade educations. It's not. It's more engineers. These are not engineers.
The docket question. Well, we're looking at somewhere north of 70,000. If it's 22% that have that graduate degree.
Okay, but it's still lower than the national average. But here, I guess, here's my question. The DACA question is unique because they didn't have consent when they came here. They came here as kids. But why should we allow their relatives in foreign countries to come here?
It's a reasonable question.
By chain migration. Why not just say, if you have a relative, you got to come the way everyone else comes when they want to emigrate to the United States?
Well, the chain migration question is a legitimate question, and it needs to be answered. And it needs to be answered in the context of a comprehensive immigration reform.
But how about in this? No, but hold on. The debate is now over DACA, and it's going to happen like imminently, right now. Yeah. And so why not just say, look, we're going to give up on chain migration, e-verify. You should have to follow the federal law on immigration.
Well, you're talking to a fellow that's been the #1 advocate of e-verify.
Well, amen. Then I'm so glad. Why don't you convince your fellow Democrats that e-verify, end of chain migration, real border control, end of sanctuary city nonsense, these aren't crazy ideas. The public supports these ideas.
Well, there are many things that we can do on immigration policy, and those are some of them. Certainly the e-verify is extremely important. It ought to be there. There are other things that need to go along with that. And I'll give you an example. California is the largest agricultural producing state in the nation, depending heavily upon immigrant labor force. That labor force is literally not available today, but if you had the ag labor program, if you had a comprehensive review, e-verify, comprehensive border control along the way, and by the way, as ranking member of the Coast Guard Maritime, you really want to spend some money wisely? Put it into the Coast Guard. That's where most of the contraband is coming in, and an increasing amount of illegal.
Nobody trusts Congress on border enforcement because they've lied to us for generations about it. We're enforcing the border. No, you're not. Actually, that's why we have these problems to begin with. So why not just cool the temperature, reassure everyone that only the DACA people are getting amnesty by just saying we're not going to allow their relatives to come through chain migration?
I'm not going to debate that with you.
So you'd be for that?
Chain migration is an issue that needs to be dealt with.
Who's against that, though, I wonder? I mean, why wouldn't everyone be for that?
Well, I suppose somebody that is here that would like to have their mother or their father come in.
Yeah, but they're not voters, so they don't get a say.
They could be.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the point.
Could be.
That's to make them voters. That's my whole point.
No, they may already be citizens.
Right.
And I can give you a couple of examples of people that have become citizens, and they'd like to have their family come.
Of course, and they can come. They can get in line with everybody else. Congressman, thank you. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
President Trump has certainly had a rocky relationship with public opinion, but his difficulties haven't done anything to make people think better of Hillary Clinton, which is kind of weird. A new Gallup poll shows Clinton approval rating at 36%, an all-time low, while disapproval has hit 61%. That's an all-time high. What is going on here exactly? Something bigger, perhaps? Julie Alvin is digital editor at Time Inc., and she joins us tonight. Julie, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So what I find so striking about these numbers, and I really feel I don't want to pile on Hillary Clinton. She lost. That's enough punishment as far as I can tell. But I think this may say something bigger and more interesting about the country. Her numbers among women are much worse than you would think for someone who is the self-described champion of all women. A lot of women don't like Hillary Clinton. Why is that?
I can't necessarily answer that question. I think it depends on who you're talking to. So, you know, if you're looking at these polls specifically, it showed that there was a drop from 79% 79 to 78% among Democrats who were taking this poll, and the poll among Republicans was from 11% to 5%. So I don't know if, the number of women who support Hillary Clinton is really the issue here, and really more that this is split across party lines. And I have a lot of thoughts on why that might be.
That is definitely true. Of course, it's a party line thing. It always has been. But her numbers among women are soft. She's been asked about it repeatedly. She lost women under 30 to Bernie Sanders, you remember, in the primaries. She lost married women in the general. And she was asked over at MSNBC the other day, why is that? And she said, and I'm quoting, "I think women, are publicly disrespecting themselves. I don't think they know what their own arguments are."
Well,
in other words, they're too silly to know that I'm a great person. Isn't that kind of patronizing?
I mean, I've heard this argument from Fox News hosts many times that when Hillary Clinton says that, women didn't vote in their best interest by voting for Donald Trump, and I certainly agree with her on that point. I think that saying that her approval ratings among women are low doesn't necessarily mean that the approval ratings of Donald Trump are then high for those same women. So, there are certainly things that Hillary Clinton has skeletons in her closet. She has been criticized most specifically by Donald Trump and the GOP and this network in particular over and over again.
Hold on, Julie. We're not talking about, Fox is one among many, many networks. And I know that it's this thing where, it's Fox's fault. Okay, but
I don't think
the majority of married women voted against her, and unfortunately, they're not all our viewers.
Well,
so here's my question: if you said, women are doing this, and I said, the thing about women is they just don't know what's in their own interest. They just don't understand what they say. You would look at me and say, "Wow, that's patronizing, maybe even sexist." Why is it okay when Hillary says that about women?
Well, I think that she was right in saying that women who voted for Donald Trump are voting against their own interests, given the fact that Donald Trump has a history of bragging about, alleged sexual harassment against women, given that a lot of the programs that he's put in place, from the minimum wage from advocating for not as high of a minimum wage to the health care bill, are things that would disproportionately affect women. So that's my view. That's also proven out by fact.
Well, no, it's not. These are obviously subjective statements that you're making. They're not factual statements. But let me just ask you, don't adult women have the right to decide what they think is best for them without being patronized by liberals?
They absolutely have the right to make the decisions that they believe are best for them. But I think that you could also say in this election that a lot of rural low-income people actually voted against their interests in voting for Donald Trump because, the health care bills that he would propose and the tax bill that's going through are things that are going to disadvantage them. So, you can say this is sexist, you can say this is elitist, but it really, if you actually look at the policies that are in place, a lot of these do disadvantage women, they disadvantage low-income people, and they disadvantage people who voted for Donald Trump. I don't think that that's patronizing. I think that it's true.
Well, it might be worth meditating on why they did that. Maybe if you think the other people hate you because they don't like your skin color or your gender or where you live, maybe that kind of wrecks the deal for you. You're not going to vote for someone you think hates you. I think that's true for both sides. But let me ask you this. Hillary's book tour kind of went on forever. I think these numbers, my guess is these numbers are going down because she's been doing all these media appearances trying to sell this book. She's incredibly rich already. Why do you think she had to go on the world's longest book tour and try to sell this book beyond the point that people really wanted to buy it? What was that about?
I don't think that it was beyond the point that people wanted to buy it. I know a lot of people were really hungry to sort of learn what lessons she took away from this election. And, what I really want to know is, why are we talking about Hillary Clinton's approval ratings? Like, I want to talk about Donald Trump's abysmal approval ratings.
I bet you do, but Hillary Clinton kind of thrust herself. Look, if Hillary Clinton wants to, move to Barbados and, do whatever Hillary Clinton does in her spare time, that's fine with me. But Hillary Clinton placed herself at the center of public attention for almost a year trying to sell this book. And so I think it's fair to respond. I don't think I'm a Hillary obsessive or hater or anything like that. She's jumping around trying to be relevant.
She wrote
Why is
a
it
book.
bad to have an opinion on that?
She's not a public figure. She's not in public office. Why does she even have approval ratings? She's a civilian. I just don't understand. And I also don't think that, this is the most watched cable news network in the country, and I don't think that, you guys can spend a lot of time inordinately bashing Hillary Clinton and then wonder why people don't like her.
I'm actually not bashing her, but let me just ask you one final question, okay? And I don't want to be mean, but can you think of a single interesting or insightful thing Hillary Clinton has ever said? I've covered her since 1992, and I have never heard one. Have you?
Yes, I can think of many interesting and insightful things. And
hit me with one
things.
profundity. I promise I'll let you What's your delivery?
Well, I think that the fact that she acknowledged in her book various reasons that came to light about why she wasn't elected, including accounting for her own tactical mistakes, as well as accounting for some of the sexism that was leveled against her in the campaign, as well as accounting for, the nationalism and populism that the Donald Trump campaign, played into. I think there was a lot of insight in that book. And you ask about the book tour, and I was somebody who wanted to read that book. I wanted to know what happened. I want to know why Donald Trump is our president. I want to know.
I could have told you. Sexism. I've watched her a long time. I knew that was going to be the answer. You should have called me, and I could have saved you. That's not the answer,
but we don't call male politicians shrill and unlikable, so it definitely played a part.
I don't know if they are shrill and unlikable. I'd be happy to. And there are who are shrill and unlikable, and I'd be happy to say that. So you've challenged me, and I will rise to that challenge. Julie, thank you.
Thanks.
New revelations continue to threaten the legitimacy of the Mueller investigation. Up next, we'll talk to a congressional Republican who's been following this carefully and may have answers to some of the questions that have arisen recently. We'll ask him coming up. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe spent 8 hours testifying before the House Intelligence Committee yesterday. The testimony was behind closed doors, secret, even though recent events at the FBI have raised major concerns about transparency there, because there isn't much at all. The Bureau repeatedly has refused to turn over materials Congress requested, even though that's unconstitutional. And Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation has been damaged, at least in its reputation, when we found out it was filled with Democratic partisans, where the majority of the lawyers he has hired are Democratic donors. Congressman Matt Gaetz is a Republican representing Florida. He's called for an end to the Mueller investigation, and he joins us now. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on.
Good to be on.
So we can't learn much or really anything about McCabe's testimony before the committee because it was secret.
How ridiculous is that?
Well, I agree with that.
The American people deserve to know whether their taxpayer money was used to go and undermine the President of the United States. The American people deserve to know whether their own FBI was working to undermine the person they elected. And so that's why I think we need to have open hearings, because if there's corruption in this investigation, the best disinfectant is going to be sunshine.
Well, of course, that's right. And conspiracy theories in the absence of transparency are beginning to flower. I mean, no one trusts anyone in Washington all of a sudden, and that might bring back some trust. So one of the key questions, not to put you on the spot, but excuse me, maybe you know the answer. Agent Strzok, who famously had an affair with his coworker, his text messages came to light last week, and in them he talked about a meeting in Andy's office. Did we find out if that Andy is Andrew McCabe?
Well, we did not find out, because despite 8 hours of testimony, that testimony occurred behind closed doors. We'll have Andrew McCabe before the Judiciary Committee tomorrow at 10 a.m., but unfortunately that will also be behind closed doors. It's obvious, though, that it's McCabe. This is the circle of people that were directly involved in the Hillary Clinton email scandal that then migrated over to the Trump investigation, I think as a consequence of their bias. But it's one or the other. Over half the people on the Mueller probe donated to Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. You've got Weissman, the number 2, praising people for defying orders from the President of the United States, and then Peter Strzok, the very person who may have dressed up this dossier as an intelligence document, going from the Clinton scandal to the Trump investigation, carrying his bias with him, and then actually planning action to undermine the president.
So do we know if the FBI paid for the dossier or any part of the dossier?
We've asked that question of the Attorney General, the FBI director, and Rosenstein, and none of them will tell us. And how arrogant is that, Tucker, that our own government will not tell us if they used our money to go and pay Russians in conjunction with the Democratic Party? This is stuff that you would see in a banana republic, not the United States.
But I'm confused. None of those people is elected by voters. You are elected by voters. This is a democracy. The voters are supposed to be in charge of the way the government operates, correct?
Absolutely.
And yet you, the elected official, can't get answers from the permanent bureaucrats or the appointed officials. How is that?
Well, that's why we're issuing subpoenas, Tucker, and either we will get answers to these subpoenas, we will find out this information and share it with the American people, or we need to start holding the senior officials at the FBI and the Department of Justice in contempt. It's totally unacceptable in a democracy to have the bureaucrats telling the elected representatives of the people that we don't have a right to know whether or not the methods and practices that were utilized were legal, were fair.
It's a subversion of democracy, I agree. Now, your own party agreed to allowing this testimony behind closed doors. You're a Republican, you're one of the younger members. What does the leadership of your party think of you going after them in public on live TV for that decision?
Well, look, I think it was the wrong decision, and I'm not alone. We've had over 20 members of the Judiciary Committee demanding a second special counsel to investigate the Clinton Foundation and the bribes that may still be impacting our national security going forward. And that shows that there is a desire within our caucus to get answers for the people we serve. I can't go back to my district and explain to my voters that, well, we just didn't get any answers, so we gave up. We decided to throw our hands in the air. That's not fighting.
Good for you. I'm not sure what I think. I'm confused. I mean, I follow it pretty closely, and I still don't know.
The Attorney General can fix all of it, Tucker. The Attorney General has the power to step forward, demand answers, and where we see clear evidence of bias, to shut down the elements of the investigation that are fed by that have led to actions to undermine the president. But it's like we've got an Attorney General who's a spectator at the Department of Justice and not the real leader of that agency.
Congressman, thank you. It's good to see you tonight.
Good to see you.
California town menaced by what locals call racist trees. Can they clear-cut their way to utopia? Excuse me. Shocking. Next. Well, the government of Palm Springs, California, out in the desert, is plotting a war on racist trees. Since the 1960s, a row of tamarisk trees has separated Tahquitz Creek Golf Course from a historically black neighborhood. Now, locals say the trees were planted with racist intent, and the city plans to clear-cut them as a result, as punishment. The cost? $169,000. Trey Daniel is a Palm Springs resident who supports cutting down the racist trees, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Daniel, thanks a lot for coming on.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
I want to put up on the screen, at first I thought, wow, this is a crazy story, but then I thought, we've learned a lot about what's racist in 2017. Here are some of the things we've learned this year are racist, okay? Ice cream trucks, car insurance, The Little Mermaid, Dr. Seuss, milk, math, science, the Bible, grammar, the iPhone X, emojis, jingle bells, babies, solar eclipse, the anti-racist book To Kill a Mockingbird is racist, and of course, Apu from The Simpsons. Now trees in Palm Springs are racist. Can you tell us how you reach this conclusion? What racist sentiments have they expressed to you? How can you prove these trees are racist?
These trees, Tucker, are not racist. You're the one that said they're racist. A tree is neutral. It's benign. And it's not the tree. It is the individuals and their intent when that particular type of tree was planted in that particular location back in 1958, 59, 60, 61.
Right.
You see, that neighborhood on the 14th and 15th fairway is the original African-American neighborhood of Palm Springs.
Right.
Now, as late as 1950, the National Board of Realtors had in their code of ethics, and I'm paraphrasing, that no realtor should be instrumental in introducing into a neighborhood any race or nationality that will cause property values to deteriorate.
Now, I'm aware of that. We had a lot of a lot of awful things were in those codes. I know that.
That's right. And yes, they were. And you see that golf course, that black housing development in 1960 is right on the 14th and 15th fairway. You build golf courses for one purpose, and that's to sell homes. You cannot sell homes to white people or anyone else
but hold on.
a golf course in 1960.
Hold on. No, but you also build golf courses to play golf. But I'm wondering, so I have no doubt, I mean, though you haven't proved it, but I'm willing to believe you that there was racist intent in planting these trees and in a lot of things going on in this country 55 years ago. But why are we punishing the trees for that? You just conceded.
We're not punishing
that
trees.
They're not, well,
as
we're
I said,
killing
the trees
them.
are benign. Because the African American, the black families whose properties are adjacent to those trees, and if you've done any research on the tree, you'll know that's one of the nastiest trees around, and it's also been declared an environmental disaster by the federal government.
What?
They grow to be 60
because
feet
it's
tall,
a wait, no, slow down. Now, well,
wide.
hold on. Now, hold on. Because that tree is a foreign tree, you're calling it nasty? Okay,
absolutely.
I guess the California I grew up in was a little bit more welcoming to foreigners. Just because the tree is not from California doesn't mean you have to kill it and call it names like racist.
Then why is the federal? We're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that tree, and the way it is not maintained, has depressed and deprived black families whose properties are contiguous to and adjacent to the 14th and 15th fairway for 65 years from enjoying, and their property taxpayers, from enjoying the same economic benefits of being on a golf course, the same aesthetic benefits, and the same social benefits.
Has it protected those houses from golf balls at all? I mean, there's always an upside to these things.
People don't go out and say, we're doing this for a racist reason. They go out and say, we're going to give you landscaping. In fact, we're going to landscape you right out of existence. And oh, by the way, these trees are going to protect you from golf balls. And oh, by the way,
well, but there's some truth in that, isn't there?
We could have planted eucalyptus.
I don't want it. The people who made these decisions,
but they didn't.
Right, I got it.
Only this tree on this section of the golf course.
Okay. Don't attack the trees again. I found that offensive just because they're not from California. But let me just ask a final question. The people who made these decisions are long dead in almost every case. And yet you're still hell-bent on killing these trees, who, by your own admission, committed no sin, did nothing wrong. Does that seem a little unfair? Shouldn't we punish the guilty and not the innocent?
I really take exception to what you just said. This has nothing to do with the trees. It has to do with black families and their
they're just getting killed in it, but it's nothing to do with them. They're just kind of in the way. You know, if you were a tree, you might feel a little differently, and maybe you meditate on that
are you a tree?
Tonight. I'm not.
What species of
but
tree
at least
are you?
I'm big enough to think about their perspective in this, and you're killing
and you're not
them.
concerned about the black people and their property values.
No, and I'm not saying I'm not concerned.
You would rather save a tree. You would rather save a tree than help a black family.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm merely saying, why punish the innocent?
Why would you not help these black families improve their property values?
Well,
and give
I would
them
love
the
to
same
have them on and talk about it.
That all the white
but I'm just not convinced. Hold on,
course.
slow down. I'm just not convinced that trees need to die to make you feel better. That's it. But look, just think about that and come back. We can continue this conversation. I wish we had more time. Trey, thank you. Wow, that was intense. President Trump's Political Action Committee has a new ad touting what it says are the president's recent success stories. Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry has taken a look at it, and he joins us now.
Tucker, good to see you. This is exclusive to Tucker Carlson tonight. A first look at how the president and his advisors are trying to pivot out of the tax cut win to enact the rest of his agenda. Once again, they're facing naysayers who say the tax plan will not work. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer today cited AT&T cutting jobs in recent years, claiming there's no way the Trump tax cut will trickle down to employees. Yet hours later, the president announced AT&T is doing the opposite. They're giving out a $1,000 bonus to more than 200,000 workers and are increasing capital spending by $1 billion. Several others like Boeing doing similar. Now the president wants to pivot to immigration, infrastructure, other big items on the agenda. So a group of his advisors that run it's a group called America First Policies is planning a $1 million TV ad blitz starting on Christmas Day. But we have it first.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you.
Every